Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, it's a vintage The Early Years of SNL. We're talking about Season 1, Episode 23 with host Louise Lasser and musical guest the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. Brad, this show is something.
We couldn't even do it ourselves. We had to bring in the legendary SNL in review, Mr. Saturday Night himself. Andy Hoagland joined us for the first time to talk about, I guess we consider, or some people consider, the first train wreck in SNL history, Louise Lasser.
Some people consider it the first train wreck. Yes.
But I love this episode. I loved having Andy on because we talked a lot about this episode and dug really deep. And I actually really enjoyed talking about it. And I think we all left this episode enjoying it, or at least appreciating it much more than most people do. So if you haven't heard this one, you got to listen to it because Andy has a lot of great insights. And we just really talk about where SNL was the summer after season 1 and like, what is a train wreck? What isn't? Whose fault was it?
Right.
Who's banned? Who's not? Some of us try to convince each other that there was a ploy for Woody Allen, whatever. But it's a really, really fun talk.
I think we get really deep into, trying to maybe not debunk all of these myths, but trying to like talk about them and really dig deep in them. And it's a lot of fun to do that, especially with this episode, which a lot of people have a lot of opinions about. So it's a really good one to go back and rewatch and then re-listen to this episode with Brad and Andy and myself talking about it. Enjoy it.
This is fun.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 23 with host Louise Lasser and musical guest the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. This episode originally aired on July 24th, 1976. Brad, this episode has a lot going on.
So much, in fact, that neither you nor I can handle this. So we brought in the big guns this week. From SNL in review, Mr. Andy Hoagland is here to help make sense of all this for us.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Andy.
Thank you.
This show really very meta throughout the entire episode, which is fun.
It is. Yeah, I actually have a note here that the Charles Grodin episode is a much better version of what this episode attempted to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point. I mean, this is interesting. It's the summer show, too. It's the first time and only time they call them back to do summer shows after they won the Emmys. 2 summer shows. So this is one of 2. They've been off for almost 2 months now, and NBC drug them back into the studio for a couple episodes.
Yeah, Brad, I was also noting earlier when I was in prep here, the gap between the previous episode and this one, which I think it's Elliot Gould, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The gap between that episode and this episode is longer than the gap between this season finale, Chris Christopherson, and the beginning of season 2.
Wow.
Oh, really?
So you have these 2 random episodes. Yeah. They're almost like one-offs, like they're like 1.5.
They're totally their own weird thing. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the other X factor here, I have a couple X factors before we dive into the sketches, but I think one of them is, Chevy Chase, right? Is they probably wanted to get Chevy back. They have one of the biggest stars in the world. Let's do a couple more episodes with him. We have him under contract.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, too, him and Louise Lasser, who we'll talk about eventually in this podcast. But, I mean, she was on her show, Mary Hartman, another huge kind of cult comedy hit. And so to get her and him together on a show at the same time at this point, very big deal.
Right.
Well, let's talk about Louise Lasser. So she's the host this week, and she's currently on like you mentioned, the hit TV show Mary Hartman, which I don't know how many people remember that show, because it's not one that's lasted the test of time like other Norman Lear shows.
No.
Partly because of her. Right? It kind of gets to, she's sort of a cautionary tale a little bit. But that kind of gets to the meta commentary that we see, them acknowledging her, run-ins with the law. Like, I think she was arrested. I don't know how deep we want to go into all that stuff, but it comes up like 3 or 4 times in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
So if people want to watch this episode, it is helpful to kind of know both about Mary Hartman, but also about the personality of Louise Lasser as kind of a more neurotic Mary Tyler Moore or something,
Yeah, I knew her a bit more so from the early Woody Allen movies, who she was married to in the mid 60s and then did a bunch of his early Bananas and those kind of movies. So and I vaguely remember her from those. That's kind of where I had my point of reference from her. But yeah, Mary Hartman. It's a crazy show. This was a satire on soap operas that was done on prime time 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And it started in January of that year, January 76. And the whole first season didn't end. It ended about 3 weeks before this episode aired, beginning of July. So what's that, 6+ months?
Yeah, she talks about that in the monologue.
So 6+ months.
She's just been absorbed with her show.
Yeah, she's doing 5 shows a week. Nuts.
That is nuts.
You mentioned Woody Allen. That's another one of my X factors, that it's almost like this episode was tailor-made to get Woody to pay attention to it, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting theory, and I don't know how much I buy it. The idea that they booked her because they wanted to try to get Woody in. They booked Preservation Hall Jazz Band on because they want to get Woody on. I don't.
And then did a Bergman parody.
And
Those
Bergman
are 3
parody. Yeah.
crazy coincidences.
I'm going to put my cards on the table. I feel I'm going to be very pro Louise Lasser in this episode, in our episode. And I kind of don't buy the Woody story that much, only because she was a friend of the show. She'd been hanging around SNL that year. She wrote that Gilda piece for Raquel Welch. So she had a connection to the show before this. And I do give some credence to the fact of how hot she was in that kind of cult comedy world. They wanted her on. I think they did want Louise Lasser on this episode for Louise Lasser. Granted, the Woody aspect would be an added bonus, but I think...
Yeah, I think both things can be true, for sure.
I don't think anything really in this episode is black or white. I really don't. That's the thing I came away with the most of watching this. I don't think, there's all these stories about what was meta, what was real, what wasn't real, her having breakdowns. I think there's a lot of gray that we'll get into, the Woody story being one of them. But to circle back on your point about her getting arrested, which is kind of what leads into her hype a little bit here and getting this episode. It was back in May. Yeah, she was trying to buy a dollhouse at a toy store in Beverly Hills, and her credit card didn't get accepted. She didn't have the cash, and she refused to leave the store. When the police came, they found out she had 2 unpaid parking tickets. They arrested her, and they found like a small vial of cocaine. And that kind of like what people point back to the beginning of her quote unquote downfall this spring, summer of that arrest, which I think you just mentioned. They actually incorporated that arrest into the end of Mary Hartman. And at the end of the Mary Hartman finale, she does have a nervous breakdown. So all those things like play well into, as you said, this meta show that I don't think anybody was ready for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, SNL has a history of, bringing on these young actresses who have shined very brightly and then started to, crest under all that pressure, rightfully so. And maybe the one way to frame this episode is this is kind of one of the first examples, if not the first example, of the show capitalizing on a young actress who has a lot of heat behind her and a lot of controversy as well.
Yeah. And in the 70s, I think the key word of what you just said is actress. I think it's very important to note that this is a woman that's hosting in the late 70s. And yeah, and again, remember too, mid 70s, there's no social media. There's, the publicity and all that is so much less that, yes, she got arrested 2 months earlier, but you probably haven't heard anything that much about it because it's a different culture. To see her actually there live and talk about it, which I know we'll get into later in the show. I think it's a big get for the show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think what it comes down to is that this show is a very interesting episode. It's very different than I think we've seen to this point, really, as far as like how far they take things and blurring that line. But I found it to be fascinating on watching it now because it's not one that you see maybe ever, right? I mean, it wasn't like in reruns or anything forever. So watching it now, it's just like a different lens on things that is kind of strange. And you think about how different the world was in 1976, where There's no social media or anything, that you would find these things out instantaneously if someone's arrested.
Yeah, it's a great time capsule episode. We were just noting before we started recording how this is a great submission for what were the 70s like, and this might not be the best SNL episode, the most famous SNL episode, but shoot, there's a lot going on here that can help you get a sense of where that decade was culturally. Like the Manson family is still extremely relevant. You have the percolations of a young Georgian farmer named Jimmy Carter, which we can talk about. The Nixon shadow is still hanging over the show. So, yeah. And then you have this seems to be effort to have like a concept behind all the sketches. Like the first couple seasons of the show do make efforts to be a little experimental and try to tweak the pattern and the formula a little bit. Which I find refreshing, going back on Peacock or if you have the DVDs or what have you, because it's not quite in stone like it is now.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen that this season too. We've talked about it with the guests as well. A lot of them come on and like to sing because they have that talent. Brad is not a fan of all of the singing.
There's a lot of singing in season 1.
But it's a different show. I think, we often refer to it more as like a variety show in many aspects where, you're highlighting, you give Paul Simon an entire episode for some reason to do his thing. Well, there's a lot to get into in this episode, and we haven't
even gotten to the cold open.
I know, and we haven't dug in, so I think we should we get into it now?
Indeed.
Yeah, head first. Let's jump.
All right, so the cold open this week starts with the entire cast on stage, or just about the entire cast on stage, and the Gilda's trying to convey to Chevy that what John said in the press he didn't mean at the time.
Chevy, I don't think it's that John was hurt. I just think he feels you're getting more attention than he is. You know what I mean? He did?
That's not a good excuse.
Well, I know, but I don't think it was that hurt.
We're on the air.
Oh,
Let's see wardrobe.
Well, here we are.
back from vacation.
And money.
Hi, John.
John then comes on stage in a beautiful white suit, talks about how he's just in from California, and he and Chevy have an awkward exchange, and they try to make up, and they forgive one another, and then they give each other fives, and that keeps going for a while, and then eventually John punches Chevy, and he falls off the stage for the Live from New York. This was a very different open from anything we've seen so far.
And it's one of my favorite, I would say.
Yeah.
I love when they do the meta stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, and the fact they've been off for 2 months. They're referencing the Rolling Stone article that came out a few days earlier. It's just all those things. I think they kick it off great. I love the opening that camera comes on and, well, here we are. And, fake getting caught on air. And yet, as we've discussed, anybody who's a fan of the John Chevy rivalry, this is a great sketch to watch those two go at it.
Yeah. And Brad, it's like you said earlier, this episode, it's both real and fake and gray, and it's like what's the wrestling term, like kayfabe or whatever.
Kayfabe, yep.
Yeah, kayfabe. Thank you. It's kind of like that. You even have a fake punch, right? That they make look pretty
they
real.
They make it look good.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Chevy sells the hell out of it. I rewatched it 2 or 3 times. Belushi's punch is fine, but it's really Chevy that takes it and does the Chevy thing, obviously.
As much as we bust Chevy's balls on the show, we always will admit the man can take a fall and can do physical humor, and he sells that and takes that dive. It's impressive.
Yeah, he goes down a flight of mini steps. It's like 4 or 5 steps or something, but still. So yeah, I agree. Props to him.
Yeah, this was a really fun cold open. I agree with you, Brad. I think it's my favorite so far because it's everyone's there, and it's so meta and just on point with what everyone's talking about the show at this point.
Yeah, and it feels very real. All of them feels very. I mean, even did you notice Jane when John came out, Mr. LA, and just Jane's reaction? She's so pissed that all that little stuff was just great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Brad, you said it earlier. I used to love the locker room stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So this is the first instance of that, which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And again, it's they've had 2 months to let the show kind of set, and they know what the buzz is. They know that people have read the Rolling Stone article. They know that people love Chevy, right? So it's kind of this is the first time they've had that long a break, to be like, this is what the show is moving forward, which is great.
And the Rolling Stone article is really interesting. It's a really long piece, and almost everybody gets interviewed in it. And I mean, the big takeaway is John. He rips into Chevy a good bit, where he kind of says he doesn't want to be Carl Reiner to his Sid Caesar, and that it's not a star show, it's a repertory show. But he actually rips into the show a bit too, where he talks about how he doesn't like a lot of the musical acts, and so many of the cast can sing that they should sing, and do they need guest hosts? So it's a very interesting take from all of the cast, but especially John on the show and Chevy in general. But that's the impetus of this sketch, is what he said about Chevy, and Chevy isn't the star of the show and we're all here together kind of thing.
Well, the star of this week's show is Louise Lasser, like it or not. And she comes on for her monologue, which is one of the more uncomfortable monologues I think we've seen to this point.
But before that, would you not say she gets one of the biggest ovations we've heard for any host coming down?
I guess.
She got a huge response from that crowd.
In my mind, I'm like, they have applause signs now. It's like not genuine necessarily.
Okay.
Unless it's her first public appearance since her arrest.
Maybe.
I mean, I guess the show just wrapped up. Mary Hartman just wrapped up, but
maybe
that
show was really big at that point. So yeah, maybe you're right, Brad. I wonder if they felt the same way in an hour and a half, but we'll get there.
I had one question when she starts going off the rails. The real pivot point is when she's upset by the Jack Nicholson moment, right? On the cue cards, right? I was trying, maybe you guys caught this. I was trying to see, what does it actually say on the cue cards? Like, how much of it is her improvising or performing without reading the lines, and how much of it is still there.
Right.
I was curious how much of that was like, okay, you're queued up to do this rant about how you don't actually know Jack Nicholson or not. You know what I mean?
I think this one's all there. I think it's all scripted. I think it was acted appropriate. Well, I'm sorry, Gary, you want to finish the explanation before we rip it apart?
I mean, so she wants to tell a story. The cue cards are wrong for her. And then she kind of has this, I wouldn't call it a meltdown, but she just gets really awkward and then says she has to leave the stage and walks off stage and goes backstage and goes into her dressing room, where Gilda tries to get her out. And then Dan comes and tries to get her out.
Louise, we're on the air.
Thank you, sir. What's that? Louise, it's me, Gilda.
Gilda, what am I gonna do? I messed up the whole show.
No.
What am I gonna do? I couldn't help it.
No, you didn't mess it up yet.
I didn't mess it up, and I just can't do it right. I mean, I just don't.
No, we'll help you. We've done a whole bunch of shows. We can have. What's the matter? You have cramps? We'll help you, Louise.
Just leave me alone. If you just leave me alone for a few minutes, I think I'll be fine. I'll be out, okay?
Miss Lasser, Louis P. Stylo, probation officer, County of Los Angeles, State of California. You didn't sign the proper papers to leave Los Angeles, Louise, and they're going to come up and do it right now, okay? And then we'll just clear it up right now, and then you can go on with the show and everything else.
Dan, could you stop it? I know you.
Dan got a weird applause when he appeared on screen.
But that's the next reference or allusion to her being arrested, is he's like her probation officer or something, right?
Yes, he comes out as in character. Yeah. And then eventually Chevy comes as the land shark and gets her to come out. That's the monologue.
I love this monologue. I thought this was great.
Yeah?
Yes. I think it's set up well. She talks about how she's not a performer. She doesn't do live. And she talked to Lorne. He's like, you're just going to go out there and wing it. Just wing it. And that's what starts setting her up for this nervous breakdown where she doesn't know what she's going to do. And she starts to panic. Then she tells the Jack Nicholson story. I love that she called it the cue cards, because half this season we bitch and complain about actors reading the cue cards, not really in the scene. So I actually love the fact that she called it the cue cards on that. And then it just gets even more meta when she runs off stage and runs past Gilda, and Gilda, you okay? Is it cramps? And
great line.
It was a great joke. The probation officer bit was funny, but then he turns it and tries to sell her automotive parts for some reason.
Classic Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Right.
Classic.
And then when that doesn't work, they bring the land shark out, and this is the first time we see the land shark not in a sequel parody, right? This is the first time it's like meta.
Yep.
And they basically get her to open her door by telling her they can get her on the cover of Time magazine. She's already been on the cover of Newsweek, Rolling Stone, People.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, I can get on Time?
I love when he just reaches his arm right out of the shark's mouth and knocks on the door. Like, that was funny.
It was during this monologue I had for the first time I had this idea, and we'll see. Well, I'll say it now and see what you think as we watch the episode. I feel like them getting Louise Lasser on this show was Lorne Michaels in the show basically giving NBC a big fuck you, where they're like, you want to bring us back in the summer and make us do a show? This is what we're going to do. We're just going to be so bizarre and so out there that you're going to regret that you made us do this. So I don't know. I got the idea during this monologue, and as the episode went on, I've only further and further backed my new theory.
It's interesting.
I know.
No, I meant that you had a theory that someone could pay attention to.
It was kind of coherent.
Was Mary Hartman on NBC? I should know this.
It was not on NBC.
It was on ABC.
Yeah.
ABC.
There's a chyron that comes on later of the audience, and the chyron is NBC exec who turned down Mary Hartman.
Good call. I forgot about that. Yeah, you passed on Mary Hartman.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes. Yeah.
The only thing I was going to say is, if you are not watching this show with all of the 40-some years of hype about her in this episode, I think you get through this monologue and you're enjoying it and you think you're in for a decent show. The opening's great and the monologue is different and unique. And if you don't have all the baggage, I think so far it's pretty good.
I agree with you. And everything so far is so breaking the fourth wall. Like, it's so meta and like what's actually going on. It's different.
Right. 2 for 2.
The next sketch is not that. So we see our first look at Garrett as Idi Amin, although I believe they introduce him as Vidi Amin.
Yeah.
Because he comes on and talks about the effects of venereal disease and why you need to be safe.
Now, if you have any of these warning signs, don't neglect them. I was lucky. Fortunately, in my case, the disease has only eaten away the weak parts of my brain, leaving the strong parts to declare war on Kenya. Now, here is a normal brain, and, my brain.
And then he shows a regular brain and his brain, because he suffers from VD, which is just a big piece of Swiss cheese. This is the first time we see Garrett in this role, and it's fun to see him as Idi Amin, which I believe we see many times.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have too many shots at recurring characters, so I guess, you know, outside of a few exceptions, this is one of his more prominent recurring roles. I think he does it like 2 more times, I think, in the next couple seasons. But it's also kind of like emblematic of what a kind of like raw deal he gets, right? You know, Ant-Man becomes a big character for Marvel MCU. Who did it first? Garrett Morris.
That's right.
Forrest Whitaker wins a fucking Oscar playing Idi Amin. Who did it first? Garrett Morris. You know, like, poor guy.
Andy, I've seen a bunch of Garrett Morris's acting, and I don't think he would have won the Oscar for his portrayal of Idi Amin.
But he handles this one pretty good, I got to say.
Does.
In Garrett season 1, this is a pretty good Garrett performance.
Again, Garrett by himself to camera seems to do really well.
Yeah.
And I thought he was very good in this.
Another very timely, which I think a lot of this episode is, you know, a lot of timely humor, because the plane hijacking he refers to is, I think, just a few weeks or a month earlier that he talks about. So again, they do a good job with this whole episode of kind of really hitting on summer topical stuff.
Yeah, it kind of justifies why they were coming back, I think.
Well, it's an interesting time because they had the Democratic National Convention was going on in New York just before this, and the Olympics had just finished. So they had like tons of stuff that they could totally hit up.
Yeah.
And they end this sketch really well with the chyron at the end. VD, nothing to clap about.
Yes.
That's a good one. Yeah.
A lot of chyrons in the next bit too, because it's mostly in Swedish. So this is a take on an Ingmar Bergman film with Louise and Chevy as a couple, romantic couple. And I believe that's Tom Schiller playing Death.
Yes. Yeah. He wrote it.
Yep.
He did write it. Okay. I thought so, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Tom's a great guy. I met him in the Berkshires during the pandemic. And this is 100% up his alley. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not much of a Bergman guy. And, you know, I'm not with the last name Hoagland. I'm not big into jokes that put the Swedes at the center of the bullseye. But it was fine for what it is, right? I didn't hate it, but it's definitely a dated 70s sketch, right? Very specific parody.
It's a great example, though, of Schiller's humor, which he didn't get a lot of season one. You know, until we get Schiller's Reel, we don't see it a lot. And this is a great, this is a great bit for him to write. Yeah, like you said, it's Chevy and Louise, which we should say it's the only proper sketch of the night live that she's in with another cast member. And they sit across from each other silently, looking at each other, lovingly touching each other as the story goes on that Schiller recites in Swedish. And then, at the end, it's basically him portraying death and he's coming out to kill them. And Chevy convinces him to go get a pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, you need the keys to the Volvo. And he takes off. Yeah. And I like the end joke, the joke being they eluded death because there is no pizza in Sweden. It was funny. Yeah. I thought it was a well-written piece.
Yeah, it's a very quirky Schiller way to end the sketch. You're right. Punctuates it.
Tom Schiller's Swedish accent is phenomenal in this and so much fun to just listen to.
Well, and as we've seen a lot this season, it's another SNL sketch about death, but it's very much unlike all the O'Donoghue stuff we see, which I think says a lot. You know, like you can do it in different textures and different levels. And I think it's a really cool way to see this death humor that they've been doing all season told in a different way and done well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank God.
Andy, have you heard the story of the letter that Tom Schiller's dad wrote him about O'Donoghue?
No.
So, Tom Schiller's father was a writer, wrote for I Love Lucy. And so he comes from...
I Love Lucy. Yeah. I've talked to him about it.
Yeah. So he comes from the old school. His dad was not a fan of O'Donoghue because of all the death and, just violent stuff. And he wrote a letter one time to Tom Schiller that says something like, can Michael O'Donoghue just go ahead and kill himself and get it over with? Then we can move on from his death fixation and have it, it's just, I'm like paraphrasing it poorly, but that was the idea of the letter he sent Tom.
Yeah. Well, following up on the anecdote about Tom Schiller's father, we have a very dark, death-obsessed Michael O'Donoghue sketch about two of the Manson disciples. I actually remembered that they talk about this sketch, or Dennis Perrin talks about this sketch in the biography that he wrote of Mr. Mike, and just how it's one thing to write a sketch like that, but when Michael saw it actually being performed by Jane and Lorraine, their performance took it to an even another level of bleakness with the shrieking and just like the psychopathy of it, tweaking her nipples like that wasn't in the sketch. It's all obviously the performance. And Lorraine is just brilliant in this with like her little piggies delivery. Like her squeaky frome is genuinely a very sinister, scary performance as far as Saturday Night Live SNL goes. So I really like that one.
It's very dark, but I think you're right. The performances just kind of take it to another level. And Jane's just like cold, dead stare as she's speaking to camera was great.
Fuck it. I'm going to say it.
How great was Jane?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
She's excellent in this piece. And I really liked that it was all Jane speaking, and because Lorraine in the background just was that much creepier.
Right.
Did we explain what it was? The fact that they were selling pot holders that were made out of human...
no, I love that part.
So the whole idea being they're selling these human hair pot holders, which to your joke or your comment earlier, they're wearing these hoods the whole time. So they're going through and they make a line about if there's any mistakes, they've got to punish themselves or something. And each of these pot holders has a message to Charlie Manson. And she reads it and she says, don't drink the water, it's poisoning.
Yeah.
And she's like, uh-oh. And then that's what triggers them to cause the pain to themselves and gouge their eyes and pinch the nipples, which it's just so bizarre. And then I thought they had a great Michael O'Donoghue line in this, where at the end they pulled the caps back so they're bald, and Jane says something to the effect of like, "Order now, supplies are limited." And you see their bald head. Like, it's such an O'Donoghue line. It's great.
They repeat, like they said that line in the very beginning too.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I didn't notice it till the end.
Yeah. And then she repeated a line too, because it seemed like they missed the cue to take off their hoods.
One point. Yeah, she said, but I felt that Lorraine was just so out there in another world that her missing that cue made sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I bought that.
She's so delusional and deranged. Yeah.
And then to your point, Jane is just so like dead-eyed and calm and so freaky. They both just do a fantastic job. Yeah. That's another bizarre sketch.
Yeah. You couldn't picture Gilda in that. Gilda would not have worked that one as well.
I agree. Like you needed Jane to be the one to deliver this.
Yeah,
exactly.
We've seen Lorraine do O'Donoghue work like all season, and she's great doing Michael O'Donoghue writing. But to see Jane in it as well, she really sells it.
I doubt that Michael O'Donoghue wrote the next piece.
He probably quit by now.
Yeah. He hated animals, right? Like that was one of his things.
What didn't he hate, Andy?
Muppets, Louise Lasser. I don't know, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, true.
I sent Gary, here we'll interrupt this story. I sent Gary, apparently Michael O'Donoghue wrote a promo for this episode for Louise Lasser. I sent it to Gary. It was Dennis Perrin had actually put this online a couple of years ago. I saw this. Do you have it, Gary? Because you'll read it better than I will.
Hi, I'm Louise Lasser. Join me this Saturday night when they cut off my pigtails and force me to eat them at gunpoint. Joining me will be the Not Ready for Primetime Players, the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and Princess Brightfeather, the Skating Navajo. That's NBC's Saturday night, 11:30, 10:30 Central. Off camera or to Chevy and pullback. Now, what do you mean you don't take credit cards?
Oh, there it is.
Pretty funny. And it sounds like anything you'd hear today, that whole, on home base promo kind of thing.
Yeah, the 2 beats, 3 beats, but
it was pretty good. Anyway.
Well, we get Louise Lasser on home base at a table with some coffee cups and a dog sitting in the other chair. And Louise is just talking to the dog about seemingly something went wrong. And it kind of felt like there was an affair going on or something like that. And as she gets through it, you understand that she had a stick in the park and threw the stick to play fetch. It was kind of confusing to me at this point, honestly. Either A, it was confusing, or B, I totally lost interest and zoned out. So it could be either one of them.
I really think you're having an overreaction to this whole thing. I really do. I don't know what to tell you. I'm deeply sorry about this whole thing. I am truly deeply sorry. I want to tell you something. There are certain things that I have never mentioned to you that I think we should really talk about. You know what I'm talking about, and that's why your breathing's getting heavier like this, too.
But I thought the highlight was really how well that dog did in that chair, just sitting still.
What a good boy. What a good boy.
Well, and it's our first sketch with an animal on the show, right? This is our first SNL sketch with a live animal. I think so.
Maybe.
I can't think of one. Regardless.
This episode was full of firsts. Wow.
Yeah.
This is like a proto version of I Married a Monkey a little bit.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
Totally.
I think I prefer Tim Kazurinsky to Louise Lasser.
This sketch she just kept talking and going. And this was one actually where she kept looking off at the cue cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, was it weird? Yes. Was it odd? Yes. Did it go on a little too long? Most certainly. But this is not the worst thing we've seen this season.
Oh, I didn't know. That is true.
I'm just saying, it's weird and it's out there and it went long, but I could name probably 4 or 5 things that I think this is more interesting and or funny than that they put on this season. And I thought she actually did a great job acting, quote unquote, against the dog. The dog would look away. Don't do that. Don't look away. Look over here. She played pretty well, improving to what the dog did.
I definitely agree with that. She did well. I think maybe it goes on a little too long. This feels like when the episode starts to falter for me a little bit.
It does. And I think you're right with the timing of it. There was one point probably midway where she says something and then they cut to the dog and there's a close-up of the dog just panting. And if they would have ended there, I think you're okay.
Yes.
But they went probably another 3 minutes after that with her basically saying the same lines over and over again and playing the same gag of not looking. But yeah, they tightened that up. It's not that bad.
Yeah, like it doesn't build to anything after you establish the premise. Yeah, I totally am with you. Yeah.
And this was all her. We've talked about she's in no sketches with other cast members. And part of her telling of what went wrong with this episode is that she was told she was going to be allowed to write a bunch of stuff. And of the things it was said she fought for and really, really wanted to have was this and the diner film we'll see later, were things she really insisted on, like, I want these things on the show. But it's out there, but I think it's playing with more of the whole meta theme and the fuck you to NBC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sold on this fuck you to NBC angle, but
we'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Stay with me.
My note on this or takeaway from this was that we've seen very small, minimal sets so far. It just feels like we haven't seen much in the way of sets, and it was very much like a
black box theater kind of thing.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, this sketch definitely.
Right. Yeah, no,
right?
I meant just this. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, everything so far has just been like one, like Garrett seated at the thing, or there's just not a whole lot there.
Right.
Because the show doesn't care. So they're like, we're not gonna put forth the effort if you're gonna make us come in July.
Right. Because everybody's on break too.
Yeah.
Maybe the prop master and the set designers were all on something else at this point.
You've seen this show, how much it takes week after week after week, and you get in those rhythms and you get into it. How do you come back and just do 2 shows? You've got no rhythm as a show in general, I would think.
Right.
Well, the next sketch has got some stuff going on for you, I guess.
I mean, there's no set. It's in front of a green screen.
Well, you got the actor,
right?
That's true. That's true. It is all this is all Davey Wilson right here. Sorry. Yeah. You're right.
I mean, I think the most interesting thing in the next sketch is when we first see Dan, he comes out from behind a TV, like working on the monitor, and he is wearing glasses that are little TVs. That took the most effort of any of this because he's in front of a bookcase.
What effort? He just asked Paul Schaefer to borrow his glasses. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, I mean, this is also very classic Aykroyd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very perfect character for him. Not to go against you, Brad, but they did take the time to write a very specific musical number about the technical origins of TV.
This song is amazing. I don't know what it's about. I don't know what they were saying, but they sounded great. The women sounded fantastic.
Cathode ray, that's what they call him. Cathode ray, and I only hope that his kinescope receives the signal that I'm sending. Electron gun, he never let me touch. Electron gun, but this time he'll find my 600 lines can induce his ionic emission.
It's like Aykroyd had an idea that he wanted to do his technical mumbo jumbo thing, and then Paul Schaefer happened to be walking by, and then then something happened, and there you go.
So wait, let me just set this up for anyone who's listening to this and hasn't watched this for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Okay.
So Dan's there. It comes on screen and Dan's seemingly fixing a TV monitor. And then he talks about how TVs work. And he intros this whole thing sets it up as, talking about the way in which TVs actually work, the technical parts of TV. And then it goes to a song about how televisions work called Cathode Ray, which is okay. Sung by Lorraine with backing vocals from Jane and Gilda. And they're in front of a green screen, which is just like the cathode ray that's inside of a TV at the time. And it's them singing, and like it's a really bad 70s green screen because their faces get cut off at certain points.
Disappear half the time.
Yeah. But to your point, it's a really well thought out, well produced song that they sing here too. And it's long. It's not like a short little number.
Yeah.
I think if this sketch is on another episode, I mean, maybe did you like it? Did you guys like this sketch? Actually, I should ask first.
Andy, what did you think?
I was impressed by the effort that went in and the musicality, both in the writing and the execution. But, I didn't find it funny. I was curious why they took the time to do it. But I was going to say the audience doesn't seem to be on board either. You know, they don't seem to be amused or entertained even, really.
Well, I think we've talked about this in other episodes too. Like when you're there watching, you're watching the women sing in front of a green screen, and like the monitors then probably were not what they are now. Yeah, the song's not funny. It's strange. It's totally Dan Aykroyd's sense of humor. And it's like so technical. It really is just all of the technical jargon about how televisions work. It's kind of, it's
I'm trying
bizarre.
Not to trash it because they do bring up the screen that's like only 8 people living right now understand this. I'm like, but you still did it. You clearly, maybe this goes to Brad's theory that they're sticking up their middle finger to NBC.
Andy's coming around. He's starting to turn. I'm getting him. I had those 2 notes too. I have back-to-back notes are, okay, this is a tribute to the hardware of television. Really? This is what you're going to do? And then about 20 seconds later, that chyron comes up about this is really only for 8 people who get the joke. I'm like, all right, it's funny. I get it. It works. I mean, I think this sketch has almost everything you want in it. You know, it's got great singing. It's Dan as a pitch man. They do some technical fun stuff with it. And it's bizarre. I think there's another instance you throw this on another episode. It's not as bad. But the women were just so good. Like Lorraine Newman yet again.
She was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for it being a technical piece, all of the technical difficulties that we actually had with this piece
didn't help.
No, that definitely helped. It did not help it, but kudos to them for putting all of that together. And then we're on to Weekend Update. Standard Weekend Update. Oh, no, actually it wasn't, right? Didn't something weird happen in the beginning of this Weekend Update?
And now, Weekend Update with Chevy Chase. Weekend Update, the official news broadcast of the 1976 Olympic Games.
A lot of men like that taste. I do. Good evening. I'm Chevy Chase, and boy, are you glad to see me. Our top story tonight.
And then he doesn't say the line, right? Like he says, "I'm Chevy Chase, and aren't you happy to see me?"
He says, "And boy, are you glad to see me." And boy, does that line miss. Like he looks up waiting for like a standing ovation, and everyone's like, no, not so much. No.
Yeah.
And then I throughout this Weekend Update, I just got the idea that Chevy is totally checked out. Doesn't want to be there, doesn't care. I feel like more often than not, he's not enjoying the jokes he's saying. Granted, it's not a very good Weekend Update, but still, he just seemed very detached from the whole thing. And by the end, I feel he just wanted to get off that desk.
Yeah, it was not a great Weekend Update. No. Like I kind of don't blame him for not getting into it. The jokes weren't solid. I thought you would be happy to see, Brad, that we don't have a Lorraine correspondent bit in this episode. But go ahead.
No, I was. Yeah.
We do have John on location talking to Olga Korbut, the Russian gymnast played by Gilda, and John plays a Russian interviewer. He has a Russian accent.
No, he doesn't. He plays John Belushi. That was my quote. Why does John have an accent? He plays John. They throw it to John Belushi.
Right. Yeah. Did cross my mind as well.
Yeah. But that was different to see John as a correspondent.
Yeah.
There was a bit about the moon landing that was akin to like the artist rendering stuff where you have little Martian figurines.
Yeah. Retire this bit, please.
Yeah. Very dated.
Where Chevy does the fake voice behind stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was not a whole lot in this Weekend Update.
There's not.
No commercial.
No, there was that.
No Emily Latilla.
You'd be happy with that. Yeah.
No, yeah, nothing. There's nothing that we've seen every other week, right? No headlines for people who whatever. Well, after Weekend Update, we have another slice of life sketch with Jane and Gilda on the couch talking about Jane's date with her boyfriend the night before and how far she let him go on their date.
5. She went to 5 right. In the cemetery.
Yes, that was, yeah. So the whole bit is, how far she let her boyfriend go. And then you learn that they went to a cemetery to make out, and it just was weird. And it devolves into, you know, have you seen It? Have you seen It? This was a piece that I believe Louise Lasser said she would not do. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, Annie, and tell me if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, this is like what she balked at.
Yeah, and I think this is really the impetus or the genesis of this whole Louise Lasser having a nervous breakdown, mental health issues for this show. Because, and Annie, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, that she threatened to not go on the show. Like 20 minutes before they were to go live, the story said she locked herself in her dressing room and refuses to come out.
Lorne had to come in. Yeah.
The cast is divvying up their parts. There's a story where Chevy was going to play her parts wearing a Mary Hartman wig, and Bill Murray was in the studio that night, and Bill Murray was going to take over some of Chevy's parts, which I don't know how much I buy, because when you look at the episode, she's not in that much. You know, aside from the Schiller piece, right. It's this. That's really all it is, other than, you know, the Louise Lasser monologues. But what it really came down to is, yes, this sketch. She wasn't going to go on and do this sketch, and basically was like a sword she was willing to die on. And then Jane takes her place. So Jane takes her place. We lose the host in a sketch, and it's a Jane and Gilda piece. Right, Andy? I mean, that the gist?
Yeah, and it kind of like is like a sequel to like that Madeline Kahn one too, right? Like it kind of feels like it's the same spirit of like almost like the same characters, but definitely the same point of view, same tone.
No, totally. I had the note. It reminded me of the Madeline Kahn sketch, and I was wondering if Marilyn Suzanne Miller wrote this one as well, because it feels very much the same.
It feels like it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I don't know that for a fact, but it certainly feels like it. I mean, and that's kind of the irony here of Lasser. You know, I think she's been on the record saying that she refused to go on because she didn't want her parents hearing her talk about male genitalia and whatnot. But it's like this era of the show, or really up until the last 20 years of the show, has been so male driven that those kinds of slice of life sketches by Marilyn were like almost like a rare exception in a very male dominated era, that you would think that a female host, you know, who's very enlightened and whatnot, would want to jump on board that female written sketch, presumably, right? Like, I don't think
you would think.
I don't think a man wrote that, right? And starring like another female cast member, it just feels a little odd that was the hill that she was willing to die on, like you said.
Yeah, and I think this is another instance of the grayness, you know what I mean? I think a lot of her getting ripped in the history of this episode story is, you know, Chevy really rips her apart a lot, saying she was so self-obsessed and so into her and trying to take over the show. And part of me is like, let's consider the source.
Pot, kettle, pot.
Yeah. Hello, Chevy, self-obsessed. What?
Yeah. Like, here's Chevy on my show, and all of a sudden somebody's going to come in who is kind of threatening me in like comedy fandom, and it's a woman. Okay. But I do think some of it is also her being very full of herself and wanting to die on that sword, thinking she has the clout to say, I'm not going to go on the show for that sketch. So, you know what I mean? I think it's both sides kind of overlapping a little bit,
right? And
not as one-sided as we might have heard in the past,
right?
And I agree to you. This is a bummer. I could see how this would play really well with the host. You know, so many times we watch episodes and the hosts aren't in a lot of stuff, and I always criticize it. I always want to see the host with the cast more. And this seemed like a really great sketch to have the host and Gilda play off each other. I thought it would have been like Madeline Kahn. It would have been so much fun.
Yeah, they're playing real characters.
And Gilda herself was so upset. I think that interview Louise Lasser gave, she said Gilda came up to her and was just so upset because she thought Louise didn't want to do a sketch with her, and she was so looking forward to acting with her.
I don't disagree with you, but I really enjoyed that it was just Jane and Gilda. Like I thought they did a nice job with this.
They did. They totally did. Yeah. It just was a bummer. This would have been a good way to highlight the host.
Absolutely.
Normally, maybe not this episode with her, what she was trying to do, but on a normal episode, this would have been a good sketch, I feel, to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, but as is, Gary, I do agree with you that I very much enjoy this sketch. It's just a less iconic version of what we see for Madeline Kahn.
Yeah, definitely. And we saw the Madeline Kahn one a few weeks ago, and that was just so good. But yeah, this was the same thing, same genre, but it was a
little long, unfortunately, at the end. It dragged on a little bit and then just kind of like didn't know how to end itself. But
yes, that's what I wrote down, was they have no way to get out of this.
Well, I'm sorry, this sketch or the diner film? What were we talking about?
So wait a minute. Let me just ask Andy a question.
Oh, here we go.
Well,
yes.
First, we go to Chevy on stage, who says nothing except, and now here's something I think you'll find interesting.
Great endorsement by Chevy.
Yeah.
You know?
Right? So it's a filmed piece. Andy, what are your thoughts on Gary Weiss films, just in general?
Well, I know that the consensus is that they're a little dry, a little long in the tooth, and the concepts don't really carry over. I mean, I feel like that's a little harsh to our friend Gary, a fellow Gary. You should have commiserate a little bit with him.
A little bit.
But yeah, I mean, look.
I can tell you haven't watched 16 of his films in a row, but continue.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, that said, I'm just trying to be measured.
I love how you avoided talking about this film so much that you had to bring up Gary Weiss. Way to go.
No, well, because this film
feels like him, though.
I wish this was a Gary Weiss film.
Yeah.
For so many reasons.
Oh, geez.
So this, just to set this garbage up, and then I'll ask a lot of questions that I have about this. We're at a diner, and we see Louise and Alan Zweibel, friend of the pod, come in, and they sit down at the diner and they start talking. I guess I had to watch this twice and turn on the closed captions because the audio is
so bad. That's
horrible.
my first note is, why is the audio so shitty? Yes, 100%.
So bad. And then they are going through this. They're apparently, the setup is that they're a couple and they're going through this thing. And then Louise forgets her line and she says line. And the waitress,
Audrey
Dickman,
right?
Dickman, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gives her the line. And then it devolves into another thing where Louise can't do this. And she gets up and she brings Lorne over to talk to her and get through this and whatever. And look.
And then Michael shows up, the guy from Sometimes a Great Notion.
Sarrazin, something like that. Sarrazin.
Yeah.
I was happy to see Alan Zweibel, and then I wasn't happy until it was over, because my first question was, why is this taking so long for anything to happen? And then, why is the audio horrible? But then it was, why is this not just done on set? Like, why is this a film done somewhere else? Because the gag is asking for the line. You could have done this on stage.
That's a great point.
Like, this did not necessitate it being.
I think it plays to the meta.
This was her ego. She didn't want to be there, or they didn't want her around, so they sent her off to do a short film.
Not the meta of it all? No?
I mean, apparently that's part of it, right? But did they execute it even remotely well?
No.
Awful. I mean, look, there's no cast members in this too, right? Like,
Right.
I think that's also noteworthy. Like, there's clearly, like, they don't want to commingle. There's no cross-pollination this week.
So I asked our friend of the pod, Alan Zweibel, about this.
Yes.
And my one question was how he got roped into this sketch. And he has no idea. He's like, to this day, I have no idea how it was me in this film. But it was all 100% scripted and written in what she wanted this to be. I agree with you. It's not my cup of tea and the execution isn't there. But as a meta piece, it works in that vein. She definitely had a vision. Was it a vision that was good? No. But I did have one laugh in it when they're sitting there, because I could actually understand the dialogue early on, and their food comes after they order. And she says, "Can I have a sip of your orange juice?"
Yes.
And then she chugs about half of it.
Yeah.
It was my one laugh.
It wasn't that was not a laugh. That was like a,
for this episode, that counts as a laugh, I feel like. But it was interesting. I don't know. I didn't hate this. I mean, granted, yes, it went on way too long, but especially when
now I think I hate you because you didn't hate this.
No, because I like the meta of it. She asked for the line over her shoulder to the waitress, and then they keep going. Then Zweibel asks for a line, and then she calls Lorne over because there's something in my hair, and she starts to have that breakdown a bit, and Lorne tries to talk her through it, and he can't.
Yeah, we've seen this joke already in the monologue.
But that's when they should have ended it. Again, I think if they would have ended it there, we might have been okay. Like maybe she just left. But instead, they do this really bizarre gag, like you just mentioned, where she gets up and goes to the counter and sits next to Michael. And then basically has the same conversation as if he's reading Zweibel's lines. And that, to me, I will admit, made no sense. I didn't understand any of that. But the idea of it being the meta and her having the breakdown, like I said, if she would have left when she broke down and with Lorne, I think it would have been decent.
I think this is a great example of, you can kind of see what they're going for, but there's just no competency behind the filmmaking at all. And to me, if you think about some of the more, meandering and dreadful parts of this episode, you have to offer this as case.
I will not argue that. Yes, we mentioned the dog bit is where it starts to go downhill. And I think this continues that theme of
this, confirms okay, this is a bad episode. And an update is mediocre too, as we noted. It's almost like dog bit update, and then you're like, what the fuck?
The updates are hard because it's updates, so it's always so timely, and it is always the hardest thing to really look back and watch because so many of the jokes are of that time and of that era. So I agree with you, it wasn't strong, but I always give update a little bit of grace because it is hard to judge them. But this is another one that kind of I'd bring to my defense of the show just trying to tell NBC to fuck off. Because it's not funny. It's Andy Kaufman-esque, we're just going to make you uncomfortable for 5 minutes. That's the point of this, is to be...
If Andy Kaufman wasn't brilliant, you have Louise Lasser filmmaking.
Andy wasn't available this week, so...
Yeah.
Speaking of films, too, they shot a film, apparently, of Chevy and her at the Democratic Convention. And why don't they?
Oh, is that
yeah,
right?
So they shot two pre-tapes. One was this. The other one was her and Chevy going to the convention. I don't think it's ever been aired. I mean, I don't even know what it's about. I just know that I read that they had shot it. But you got to think that would be more interesting than any of this.
Well,
stuff.
I was going to note during update, they touch on the DNC a little bit, and obviously we're about to get to the debut of a very significant presidential impression. But modern SNL would have been all over the DNC. That would have been the cold open, and they would have brought out every person who ran for president in 1976. But they don't really seize the day. So that is curious. I'm glad that you noted that.
And I think politically they haven't gotten there yet. I think they get there in season 2 when they start doing the debate sketches with Carter and when Chevy's still on there as Ford. I think they start to realize what they have politically as far as that kind of commentary. And so I think maybe at this point in the summer, they weren't at that level yet to do it. Or like you said, nowadays they'd be bum rushing the place and setting up live feeds from there and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
Right.
We should note that at the end of that, the Chiron did come up saying a film by Louise Lasser. So she is totally to blame.
They're putting all the blame. Yeah, this is all her.
Yeah, I just real quick on this film because I was so bothered by it. And I was thinking this could have just been a sketch where instead of going back to the breakdown one note through you have on this episode, you could have played off of the line thing and made it more of a recasting or something more interesting than she's having another breakdown.
I just had this thought, and tell me if I'm full of shit because I might be. But does this film play any better into the whole meta idea of her having a nervous breakdown because it's pre-taped, because it happened before Saturday? You know what I'm saying? Yes, if they did this as a skit, it kind of falls chronologically in order from obviously the monologue down as this is all happening this night. But as you show this as a pre-tape, she, in this meta performance she's doing on this episode, is showing she's been like this all week and kind of plays more to that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just thought literally now, so I could totally be off my rocker.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. It shows that there's more intentionality here, and it shows that this is supposed to be this kind of running commentary on her Mary Hartman persona and this thing that happened in May, the arrest and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, and to what we've talked about before, where it's not like it is now where social media and performers have their own accounts and speak in a firsthand way. I think there was a lot of blurring of the lines at that time for people of who was Mary Hartman and who was Louise Lasser and where did one end and the other begin. And they were really able to capitalize on that on a show like this. And that's why when you look at it in that context, you know, I don't know if it's as bad as people have been laying claim to for 40 years.
You got to get, I mean, this whole thing about she's been banned from SNL and all that stuff. Like, I give that a little grain of salt type of thing. I mean, I give the show credit for trying something and playing with the strings a little bit and being playful about it. You know, even if it doesn't work, I'll take this over some of the more modern episodes that are out there that follow this like almost zombie
cookie cutter,
of what the show should be, because it's always been like this,
right?
You know, like I feel like every once in a while you'll see a glimmer of like references here and there to a previous sketch or whatnot, but like it's almost like this is the beginning of something that ends with like the Francis Ford Coppola episode, maybe. I need to think a little bit about that.
That's a good
but there's like a history of SNL attempting episode long concepts that this is a part of and maybe starts. You guys probably can confirm that, but
there's definitely much more experimenting and going out on a limb this first season. Part of it being that it was a variety show, it wasn't a full-on comedy show yet. Part of it being they were underground, they weren't a big, you know, national sensation, and they could roll the dice a lot more. And that's part of what they wanted to do when they showed up, was really kind of turn television on its head.
And they're still just figuring it out.
They're like, who knows? Like, God forbid this episode was a huge success. You may be seeing a lot more of these episode-long performance pieces, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Thank goodness.
Speaking of off the rails, Gary gets back on track.
Yeah. So luckily, they didn't have to take down the green screen from the girls singing, because John comes on in front of the green screen to sell John Belushi's wardrobe. So it's John Belushi's exclusive line of men's clothing. I believe he calls it Uniquely Belushi. And he's trying to sell clothes that he's worn on the show so far. So he's hawking a vest that is reversible that he bought for
literally
$12.
Selling the clothes off his back.
Yes.
I'm finally able to offer you my exclusive line of men's clothing. I have personally selected out of hundreds of styles and fabrics clothes with that distinctive John Belushi style. Clothes that I made famous on NBC Saturday Night. Clothes like I'm wearing right now. For instance, this reversible vest. You can wear it this way or the other way. It's got buttons on both sides, you see. This shirt, it's a very personal shirt. It can be worn any way you like. Your sleeves roll down and roll your sleeves up like this. See? Very nice shirt. You can open up the collar like this, kind of cool and breezy. I personally selected this shirt out of hundreds, and I paid $12 for it. You can have it for $3.
Again, you talk about the like commentary. Like, it's almost like John has been stewing over this incident with Chevy since the cold open, and it's such a contrast to him coming on with his like slick LA clothes. You know, now it's like him kind of revealing the true self or what have you. And it's also kind of like him trying to put the Belushi name out there. Like he's aware that Chevy's more famous because he's the one who's saying his name every week. And this is almost like his, I don't know if it's like a winking kind of thing, but it's almost like his more humble working class attempt at doing that or something, which again it feels like it's in conversation with Chevy's, you know, more I'm a rich guy from Bard or whatever thing, you know. I don't know. Is that off the does that miss the mark, do you think?
No, I think that's there. I think it's pretty close. And I think, you know, this plays very well in season 1. And we've noticed this a lot. Season 1, John is really great because he's subdued. He underplays it a lot, where I really like the whole, I'm an underpaid actor. I'm not making any money. Like, you know my face, but I can't afford stuff like buy this Cream album for $2.
Yeah.
And it comes off really well. Where if they would have done this sketch again in season 3 or 4, the joke would have been, I need money to buy drugs. And, you know, he would have been hyped up and it would have been outrageous.
Right.
So for me, I love watching these clips of John in season 1 where it's more toned down. And it was nice to see John get a turn. It felt like almost everybody was getting a turn tonight. Garrett had his sketch, Gilda and Jane and Lorraine got to sing, Dan had the pitch man. So it's like, I feel like everybody's getting a little bit of a moment to shine, which is always nice.
Yeah, I mean, you still sense that Belushi chip on his shoulder too. which kind of carries over from the Rolling Stone comments that you summarized earlier as well.
But he's still got that John lovability where he's like talking about the shirt, unbutton it, cool and breezy. He can just look at you and pull you in, which is why I love him so much. And that one line right there just encapsulated it for me.
I agree. I was surprised he didn't more blatantly call it out. The fact that like not all of us got giant contracts to be on this show. Something like that. That's what I was waiting for with this. Well, Dan had his moment to shine in the next bit where we see his unveiling of his Jimmy Carter impression.
Yeah, important moment.
This is huge. So he comes down halfway down a flight of steps to address this crowd that his wife told him is there. And this just felt like Dan workshopping his Jimmy Carter impression and blatantly saying to the audience, like, this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to have pauses. And then I'm going to make eye contact. And then I'm going to talk about Bob Dylan songs. And I thought this was brilliant. I loved this because A, we were seeing this for the first time. And B, we've seen Dan's Richard Nixon, which was amazing. And the juxtaposition of how he does his impressions of political figures versus Chevy, who just comes on and says, I'm Gerald Ford and I'm going to play dumb. To me, it was like, oh, he's playing Jimmy Carter. He's like got that big smile at the end because he has something in his lips to convey the teeth. I just thought this was great.
I'm going to establish something everywhere I talk. And that's something else, eye contact. Everywhere I go, be it a room of 50 or a room of 5,000, I'm going to sweep the room with my eyes like I always do, just like this. And I'm going to make eye contact. Another thing I'm going to do when I'm speaking, talking, I'm going to speak out for justice, change, for growth. I'm going to pause a lot. Just like this. Pause. Talk to you. And while I pause, I'm going to make eye contact. You know, I like to quote Bob Dylan. And he said something I think means a lot to Americans. And that is, you should not feel so all alone. Everybody must get stoned.
Especially, it's just Dan. You know, I mean, this is almost like a trope or trite critique, but, you know, it's so refreshing just seeing him kind of embody Carter with the voice and some mannerisms, and you don't need the makeup, you know, like no one needs...
You don't need to shave the mustache. You can keep a mustache.
Right. You can have your hair be like summer blonde even. Yeah. You know? Like, don't bother with a wig. You don't need any of that, you know? And look, Aykroyd's what, like 24 here?
Yeah.
I think he had just turned 24 like 2.5 weeks before. Again, the modern show would just never do that. They would overthink it and make it a little bit too polished. And I like that it's just a 24-year-old guy who has a sense about the voice and has a thing about, you know, some of the beats that Gary just referenced. And that's all you really need. And it's way better than much of what they've done in the last couple seasons in terms of political impressions.
Yeah, I mean, you guys nailed it. It's Dan's preview of here's what you're going to see this fall. And then Carter wins, and he does this impression, I think, almost 30 times before he leaves the show, season 4.
Right.
And you can tell he's working it out. The accent's not there. The mannerisms, you know, it's all coming together. But yeah, it's fun to see for the first time.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, that's followed up by Louise Lasser coming on stage in the same outfit she's worn all night. Just noting
now
that.
you're just trying to pick on the woman. Jesus,
no.
give her a break.
I'm just, in my notes, I wrote she's still in the same outfit. That's all. Except for the Bergman film. She was in white. But anyway. And she introduces the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. This is a group from New Orleans. They're still around. I saw them when I was in New Orleans a few years ago. They're still great. And they come on and perform this song, Panama.
Did you know this is not the Van Halen Panama?
I realized it once they started playing, but I was really hoping that David Lee Roth would come on.
I was disappointed that Garrett doesn't pop on. by the way. Isn't he a musician from New Orleans? Doesn't he know those guys? What's the deal?
I didn't think of it. That's a good point. Yeah.
Maybe he does know those guys, and that's why they were like, no.
Right. But like Garrett performed with Harry Belafonte in like the late 50s and stuff. Like he has legit chops.
Oh, was that last?
Especially from
was that last week we saw? Or the week before where Garrett does the opera? He performs opera. It's amazing.
I'm just curious why that, we don't see much of Garrett after EDVD, right?
No, I don't think we see him at all.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what happened there.
I'm just wondering what happened getting this as your musical guest. I mean, this whole first season is filled with musical acts that are past their prime, don't have a prime, playing cover songs from anywhere from 1901 to 1939. You've won the Emmys. You've had 2 months to figure this out. And this is what you come back with? I mean, this does lend credence to your, let's try to impress Woody Allen. Yeah.
They wanted Woody Allen. They know that Woody's at home and he's going to check out this cool band that he worked with on Sleeper or whatever, right? Like,
and I mean, they're, don't get me wrong, they're good musicians. I mean, it's fine. It is for what it is. They're good. They play it well. Like they're very good musicians. And if you like the music, if you're randomly up at 12:30 at Saturday night and you wanted to hear an old jazz tune, you probably really dug this. And they only do one number. This is, I think, the first time we've only had one number from a musical act.
I think that might be right.
Yeah. And it was late. I mean, the last 20 minutes of this show is this and her rambling.
Oh God. Is that the segue?
I mean, it didn't mean to be, but it's just interesting of this show. It's like, here's how we end the show. Be. Are you trying to figure it out?
No,
I don't even know how you preamble it.
It's just,
well, she comes. Since I'm the only one who apparently likes her, I'll try. So they come back and she comes down the stairs again and basically sits on home base and ends up giving what becomes, Gary, you must have timed it. How long?
It was almost 11 minutes.
So a 10, 11 minute monologue. It starts with her not being able to comprehend that she's putting on her shoes and that 20 million people are watching her put on her shoes. Then she goes into a rambling story about how she had a guy at her house and he stole everything in her house and left. But she takes a pretty interesting turn where she does bring up the dollhouse incident and her arrest. Because she actually alluded to it in the monologue. She's like, let me tell you a story. I was in Beverly Hills and everybody thought it was good. She even mentions, she says, it's not that. And that was the Jack Nicholson story in the monologue. So she actually tells the story about, at least her version of what happened of her getting arrested, which I don't know, but this might have been the first time she publicly spoke about it.
Oh, and then one day I'm in Beverly Hills. I went to Beverly Hills. It was my friend's birthday, and I decided to have a surprise party for her. And I just wanted to buy a great birthday present for her, so I went to this great toy store in Beverly Hills, and what a fabulous doll's house. I mean, there was a room for me in there, you know? It was just great. And then, I don't know, I think I didn't have any of the right credit cards. I had credit cards, I just didn't have any of the right credit cards. So they wouldn't take a blank check, and then the next thing I remember, there were a lot of policemen. And then I wasn't in the toy store, I was in another building. The municipal building. It's a very nice building, actually, very 30s.
And, you know, she does this weird thing where she keeps talking about herself and then mentions Mary and sings this little song about Mary, this recurring motif throughout, which I don't really know how well that worked or tied it together. But it's an interesting, I think, comment on fame and stardom and where she was. And when you sit back and look at it, I mean, yes, it's way too long. But it's interesting. And you think about this woman who at the beginning of the year was nobody, and she just spent 6 months on this grinding show and has become a huge cult comedy star, been arrested, in the headlines. I mean, I think it's interesting to have her have a chance to try to tell her story and keeping with this whole meta thing. I just wish it was better. I love this idea and I love this concept, just done way too long and way too meta.
I mean, Brad, to your point, we've touched on this a little bit at the top of the episode. You know, history has not been especially kind to Lois Lasser, right? Like, she did not become an icon. You know, like Mary Tyler Moore is sort of what we think of when we think of this type of female comedy TV star from the mid 70s, right? And it's almost like she had this moment where she wasn't Woody Allen's ex-wife. She was a TV star of her own. She was in a very stressful, high-impact situation. There was something there, something interesting there, but just something about her doesn't really stick long term. I think it's true about her career as a comedy star, a 70s celebrity, and I think it's true as an SNL host for this episode as well, too, a little bit. So I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think that's a very empathetic, thoughtful take on it. In my notes, I have, you know, like, imagine if Kanye or Lindsay Lohan or Britney Spears did something similar in the internet age. People would go fucking crazy, you know, but it just, there's something about, it's a little long, it's a little like meandering and muted, that it's just, it doesn't get to where it needs to be, you know, which is too bad.
I did real quick, which I feel like so much of this is, you know, the dog sketch, the diner, exactly. Like it's there, and everything goes way too long and doesn't land.
It doesn't quite do it. Yeah. You can tell what they're going for. They're striving for something, or she's striving for something, and it's like, no, not that. Don't do that.
Right. I agree. Like, the concept is there, and if everything was just a little bit better and a little more, there's just needed to be more editing. Like that's all. Like, someone else needed to look at the script and go, nope, you can cut this, this, and this, so that she could hit the good parts of what she was trying to do. Then the show would have been much different and much better, I think.
And maybe that's where the tension is that she wasn't receptive to that. I mean,
perhaps.
That's just me speculating, but maybe it's, you know, SNL is a collaborative sport, you know, and maybe it's, she was a little bit too much like, no, this is my vision. We have to do it this way. No, I'm not doing a sketch where I have to share his time with Gilda and talk about, you know, my chest or whatever, you know?
Right.
But I mean, one thing that's a takeaway for me recording this, and I hope for the listeners, is that this is not necessarily a train wreck episode that deserves a reputation of being one of the most awful episodes of all time, and that she was crazy and got banned from the show due to her antics. There's something that they're trying to do here, and it just doesn't rise to the occasion. But there's something interesting there, and you got to give the show props and give her props for that.
Absolutely, Andy. Yeah.
I mean, we might as well, you know, they do good nights. She comes out, does good nights. She's sitting back in home base in the little stage in the center. She's got the dog with her. She thanks everybody. She thanks the dog. She thanks the cast. And the cast seems happy with her. Like, no one's standoffish. Garrett grabs her hand. Gilda smiles. Jane gives her a nod. Like, everybody seems happy with her. So, as everything you were just saying, Andy, it's just a bad episode. I think it's a bad episode. I think, here's my whole theory. I think they took a swing. They took a big swing on the show, and they missed. I think it was trying to be a fuck you to NBC. You're going to make us come in the summer. We're going to bring Louise Lasser, who I think was totally game to be like, sure, I'll train wreck your show for you. It's very meta. It's right up my alley. I'd love to do it. And I think when the show became such a bomb, the easiest thing to do was blame the host. Because if you look back, there's not a lot of conversation about it. You hear stories from Lorne, Chevy, and O'Donoghue, and that's really it. It's men. I tried doing a lot of research. I couldn't find any female person from this show commenting on this ever. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I was digging. I couldn't find up. I actually even reached out to Lorraine Newman to see if she, by any miracle, would chime in. Didn't. But I think it's very indicative. It's the mid 70s. It's very easy for men to call the narrative and drown out and or call women crazy. And I think that's what happened here. The show was never rerun until it came out on DVDs 40 years later. So all you had was the hearsay of what happened, and he said, she said, they said. So it's very easy for this to snowball and become this is, Gary, and we've seen so many episodes. This is very formulaic of other episodes of season one.
Sure.
Take the meta out of it. It's very akin to Lily Tomlin, where she doesn't do that many sketches with the cast, brings a lot of her own stuff in, does her own pre-tapes, her own character kind of thing. It's not the first time we've had a episode where the host is not in a lot. It was like Desi Arnaz was in like one sketch for the first half of the show. Right. So I think it's like history lends itself to just heaping on. And then it becomes lore, this is this infamous episode. Right. This is this horrible host who's lumped in with, the Steven Seagal, Milton Berle's, Nancy Kerrigan's of the world of worst host of all time.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, I was going to say, the two examples that you just rattled off from season 1, Lily Tomlin, right? Like Mount Rushmore, female comedians, all time, brilliant, Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And then Desi Arnaz is fucking I Love Lucy. Right. What they're not is Louise Lasser, So I think that you're right. There's something unfair going on. Which I'm sure there's maybe more to it in the long arc of her career. The fact that Blood Rage is the only thing I really know her from. But I think that you're probably right, though, that there's so many, I keep using the word, there's so many icons that end up hosting the show. And, she's just one of the ones that you're like, oh, she hosted? You have to like Wikipedia her. You're like, oh, that's weird.
And I'm not saying she's a total victim. Like, I'm sure there's some of it. Like, she came in with some baggage. She was going to not go on air for one sketch. I mean, so there is a little bit of that comes in. So there's that grayness. It's, both sides of the story. I think there's some validity to it.
Right.
But at the end, I think that's just what happened. I think they took a big swing and missed.
Yeah.
Well, this show is certainly has its stories and has a lot going on here. So, Andy, every week we do a thing where we talk about our best bits from the show. What's your best bit?
I kind of want to give the MVP to Dan Aykroyd, and I'm trying to think if it's him trying to lure Louise out of the locker room by pretending to be her probation officer, or whether it's him debuting Jimmy Carter, which, it kind of trumpets the beginning of a great presidential run on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, those jump out. And actually, you know what? No, wash that away. Keep that or don't keep that. My favorite moment of the show, my best bit, is when they cut away to the dog, like Brad said, and the dog is like staring at the camera, panting. That's my favorite bit of the show. Easily. That's easy. Yes. Boom.
That's a good one. Brad, what's your best bit?
I've got two. I go with the opening. I think it's probably the best opening, the most fun opening we had all season. And I really liked the monologue, the meta-ness of it, the whole storyline of it. I thought those two things were actually really great. Like I said, I think this episode started off really good. If you weren't coming in knowing this was one of the most infamous episodes of all time, 2 sketches in, you think you're in for a good ride.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. I think I really liked the cold open. I thought that was really strong. I don't think watching it, I appreciated the monologue as much as I do now, having talked to you guys about it. But my favorite was seeing Dan's Jimmy Carter for the first time. Like, I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that.
So no one's picking the diner. Interesting. I would have thought.
Yeah, we're all surprised. Gary Weiss picked the diner because he's still trying to achieve that. That was mean. Andy, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this show.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, guys. This was a fun one to rewatch and noodle about for a couple days. So I appreciate the opportunity. This is a great show, by the way. You guys are doing God's work here.
Thank you.
I don't know that there's a ton of shows. I don't think there's any shows that really do what you guys do. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I spent half my day following you on NSL and Review, but tell everybody where they can find you online and in the real world.
Yeah. Please give me. I know that Elon has kind of mucked it up for all of us, but if you are a fan of X, aka formerly known as Twitter, people might know it as Twitter, people might know it as X. I'm not quite sure where we've landed. Maybe when this podcast comes out, there'll be an answer to that. But if you could give me a follow there, that would help my ego. And then typically when there's not a strike, I do the recaps for SNL for Entertainment Weekly. And then I also, I love to do alumni, former cast member Q&As for Vulture. So yeah, if folks want to check out that Q&A, that would be great. Otherwise, I just live on X. I live on Twitter.
At SNL in Review, right?
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. This was great, Andy. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything you brought to the discussion, too. It was a lot of fun.
Of course.
Next week.
Woo! Next week we got a treat.
Yeah.
2 things. One, if you're still listening, Gary and I are going to go live for the first time this season. We'll sit in the same room and talk about the Chris Christopherson episode. And in doing so, and in honor of Chris Christopherson himself, we're going to get drunk and do it.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this. So next week, Gary and Brad getting drunk, talking about season 1, episode 24 with host Chris Christopherson and musical guests Chris Christopherson and Rita Coolidge. So until then, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
And have a pleasant tomorrow.